Hi everyone, welcome back to the Dark Mother podcast. My name is Emily Singh and I'm your host. This is the first podcast where I'm going to be making a YouTube video while I'm recording a podcast. So I am very uncomfortable in front of the camera. That's why I normally do just podcasts. I'm going to be reading off a script, so if I'm looking off in another direction, I'm reading my script. So bear with me. In this podcast, we dive into the deepest issues that face humanity today. I shine light on this darkness not to show you how messed up this world is, but so what is in the dark can be illuminated. You cannot even begin to heal or fix a problem if you're not even aware that there's an issue in the first place. Today, I'm going to be following up the last episode on how to help a loved one during a severe mental health crisis with today's episode, how to support a loved one struggling with mental health. Today, I'm giving you advice on a personal and a professional level. I've spent years giving support to loved ones struggling with mental health. Not only that, but I'm a certified nursing assistant, and I've worked for over a year on a unit with a very heavy psychiatric population. So I've gained lots of experience. I'm not claiming to have a cure or all the answers. What I am claiming is to have valuable knowledge on how to offer emotional support. The DSM-5 TR Total Revision has 70 different disorders listed in it. That being said, I can only offer you advice for how to support those suffering from conditions that I've had enough experience with to be effective, which is only a small percentage. The conditions that I have the most experience with is bipolar, depression, Ptsd, anxiety, schizophrenia, premenstrual dysphoria disorder, Alzheimer's, addiction, and binge eating disorder. I will spend some time on each condition on how to provide emotional support to those struggling with the condition. Now, let me start by telling you that you cannot give support to anyone if you yourself are not feeling supported. You must take care of yourself first before taking care of anyone else. Before you go on a mission to save someone, first ask yourself, have you had enough to eat? Have you had enough sleep? Have you had enough time to exercise? Have you taken care of your obligations and responsibilities? Do you have the resources to help? If the answer is no in any of those areas, then maybe you are not the best person to provide support. Can you reach out to someone else to help provide support? Now, if your answer is yes, then let me tell you what you can do to help. No matter what condition someone is struggling with, we can all agree that everyone deserves respect. I think we can also agree that we all need to treat each other the way we want to be treated. You can never know what another person is going through until you have walked in their shoes. Nearly 1 in 5 Americans are diagnosed with mental health conditions. Out of all the people that you know, can you identify the 1 in 5 that are struggling? Maybe, maybe not. There is a stigma associated with mental health, and because of that, most people hide the conditions that they've been diagnosed with. There are a few people in my life that I was surprised to find out were struggling with a condition. If they had not told me, I would have never suspected. Giving emotional support to someone struggling with mental health is not about curing, fixing, or changing that person. That is, as long as they're not harming themselves or anyone else. It is about meeting them where they are and giving them the support they need to feel a little bit better. For example, I've worked with many people on the schizophrenia spectrum suffering from delusions and hallucinations. However, delusions and hallucinations are not limited to this group. It does absolutely no good to tell them what they are seeing and believing is not real. All that is going to do is cause an argument. In this situation, the best way to provide support is to be present with that person. Be curious, ask questions, ask them, what is it that you're seeing? What is it that you're believing? These delusions and hallucinations can be very scary. Staying with that person when they are scared is often exactly what they need. When someone is suffering from delusions and hallucinations, it is a good rule to be curious and listen to what they have to say. That is, as long as they are not making any dangerous plans, threats, or actions based off their delusions and hallucinations. This advice that I'm giving you might be a bit frustrating to you if you are desperate to orient your loved one to reality. You might even think there is harm in not orienting your loved one to reality, as if it might make their delusion and hallucinations get stronger or last longer. Trust me, it won't. Those delusions and hallucinations are not going to go away until your loved one gets on the right medication. It is always best to avoid hospitalizing the person as long as staying home is a safe option. Outpatient care is preferable in most cases. Let me tell you why. I've spent a little over a year working on a unit with a heavy psychiatric population. It was a med-surg floor, but honestly, they should have turned it into a psychiatric floor. On this floor, they were very ill-equipped to support their psychiatric patients. I mean, they didn't even have group therapy, which is standard for mental health hospitals to provide. However, like I said, this was a med-surg floor. What happened at this hospital was that none of the other floors would take these psychiatric patients, and they would put them on our floor. Eventually, the staff on this floor did become highly trained in de-escalation to prevent workplace violence. We had numerous patients on involuntary treatment acts, ITA holds, which means they were being held against their will. When you get put into a hospital against your will, you lose a lot of freedom. First off, you don't have the comforts you have at your home. You have very little control of what medication that you take. You can make suggestions, but the doctor gets the final say. Not only that, but any object that can be used as a weapon against yourself or others is taken away, which could be basically anything. You have to wear clothes that identify that you are on a hold. At this hospital, anyone on an ITA hold had to wear orange scrubs, so they literally looked like inmates. At the hospital I work now, you have to wear disposable blue scrubs that don't breathe and can make you very sweaty and uncomfortable. This is to deter you from leaving the hospital, because in the elements, like if you were to go out on the street and it would be raining, this would not keep you warm and it would just soak right through. It's pretty much paper. Depending on your diagnosis, you might not even be allowed to use utensils, so you have to order only finger food or eat with your hands. You might not even be allowed to leave your room to walk the unit, depending on the circumstances. You might even have zero privacy because a staff member might be watching you one-to-one to prevent you from harming yourself or others. If this is the case, you cannot even go to the bathroom by yourself. In the very worst scenario, if the patient is trying to escape or cannot be stopped from hurting themselves or others, then the patient will be put into 4-point restraints, which means that they won't be able to use any of their limbs or get comfortable in the bed until they agree and demonstrate that they can be safe towards themselves and others. My point in sharing all this with you is that the hospital is not a very nice place to stay, so I recommend that it be avoided unless your loved one is an imminent threat to others, suicidal, homicidal, or gravely disabled. Gravely disabled basically means you cannot feed yourself appropriately, take yourself to the bathroom, or that you cannot attend to your own hygiene. So now let me tell you when I do advise that you help your loved one get into the hospital. If they are taking or making dangerous threats or actions, then the next best thing you can do is offer to take them to the doctor or emergency department. You could try to persuade them to go by telling them that the providers there will know exactly how to keep you safe. If they are totally against going to get help, but you know that they are an imminent threat to themselves or others, then you will have to take stronger action. If they start to make dangerous threats, record those threats so that you can use it as evidence so that the authorities can hospitalize your loved one. Once you have evidence that your loved one is making threats, you can then call 911 and ask for a designated crisis responder, or DCR for short, to evaluate your loved one. If you don't live in Washington State like I do, then DCR might not be a term that other states use. So in that case, you could ask for a welfare check or a mental health responder to come out. Once they arrive, you can provide the evidence that you've collected. If your loved one is an imminent threat to themselves or others, homicidal, suicidal, or gravely disabled, and unwilling to accept treatment, then at this point they will be treated involuntarily. If your loved one does go to the hospital willingly or unwillingly, what you can do to support them is to stay in contact, call them at least once a day, visit them if visitors are allowed, ask staff what kind of items you can bring your loved one to make their stay more comfortable, bring them food or drinks if it is permitted, make sure to get them a get well card, and maybe some paperback books, coloring books, or coloring crayons. Also, make sure you tell the staff what the baseline behavior of your loved one is, so that way they can help them get back to normal. The rest of the advice I'm going to give is going to be about providing support to those who are not requiring hospitalization. I talked a little bit about what you can do to help those suffering from schizophrenia. Now I'm going to go more in depth about it. Hollywood has portrayed those struggling with schizophrenia as violent and dangerous. In most cases, this is not the truth. I even regret to tell you that when I was young, that I made the mistake of asking my friend who told me that her and her aunt had schizophrenia. And I asked her if her aunt is dangerous to be around. She was very offended because she too also had schizophrenia, which I would have never known unless she had not told me. This condition is only noticeable during times of instability. The National Institute of Mental Health, or NIH, describes schizophrenia as a serious mental health illness that affects how a person thinks, feels, and behaves. People with schizophrenia may seem like they have lost touch with reality, which can be distressing for them and for their family and friends. The symptoms of schizophrenia can make it difficult to participate in usual, everyday activities, but effective treatments are available. Many people who receive treatment can engage in school or work, achieve independence, and enjoy personal relationships. The NIH goes on to say, negative symptoms include loss of motivation, loss of interest or enjoyment in daily activities, withdrawal from social life, difficulty showing emotions, and difficulty functioning normally. Negative symptoms include having trouble planning and sticking with activities such as grocery shopping, having trouble anticipating and feeling pleasure in everyday activities, talking in a dull voice and showing limited facial expressions, avoiding social interaction or interacting in socially awkward ways, having very low energy and spending a lot of time in passive activities. In extreme cases, a person might stop moving or talking for a while, which is a rare condition called catatonia. These symptoms are sometimes mistaken for symptoms of depression or other mental illnesses. Cognitive symptoms include problems in attention, concentration, and memory. These symptoms can make it hard to follow a conversation, learn new things, or remember appointments. A person's level of cognitive functioning is one of the best predictors of their day-to-day functioning. Cognitive functioning is evaluated using specific tests. Cognitive symptoms include having trouble processing information to make decisions, having trouble using information immediately after learning it, and having trouble focusing or paying attention. Violence. Most people with schizophrenia are not violent. Overall, people with schizophrenia are more likely than those without the illness to be harmed by others. For people with schizophrenia, the risk of self-harm and of violence to others is greatest when the illness is untreated. It is important to help people who are showing symptoms to get treatment. So based off of all of the above, the best way that you can do to help someone struggling with schizophrenia is to be there for them. Make sure they have groceries, check up on them, see if you can cook a meal for them, help them clean up their house, or help them manage some of their responsibilities that have become too overwhelming. I'm not saying that they always need help with these tasks. Like the NIH says, if they're being treated, then they can be completely highly functioning people. What I'm saying is if they are struggling, then this could really help your loved one out. I want to share with you one more experience I've had with a patient with schizophrenia. In the hospital, if someone is threatening violence, like I said earlier, then they will be required to have constant supervision. I was just starting my shift and I was told that I was going to sit one-to-one with a patient. I got report, I was told that this patient, whom I will always remember, we will call her Shay, but that's not really her real name. I was told that she was pissed that the other one-to-one sitter was going home and that she was going to beat the ass of the next person who was to sit with her. And that person happened to be me. I was terrified. Shay was bigger than me, and this was my first time working with a patient with schizophrenia. At the time, I had been trained in de-escalation, but I had no professional experience yet with dealing with this type of patient. The truth is, hospitals really need to provide more mental health education. Luckily, Shay did not beat my ass. However, once I introduced myself, she walked out of the room, which she was not allowed to do, and told me she was leaving to go kill herself, that the voices in her head were telling her to do this. Inside, I was panicking. I didn't know how to stop her because I knew that physically I could not put hands on her to physically stop her. I was going to have to persuade her, and she was not having it. Luckily, the staff on the unit recognized that I needed help. This one nurse, who I will always be so grateful for, approached Shay and asked her why she wanted to leave. She told her that she is safe here in the hospital and does not need to leave. She told her she does not need to listen to the voices in her head. She also told her that she understands how scary those voices are and that we are here to protect her. The way this nurse treated Shay changed me forever. I realized that even though Shay was threatening to beat my ass, that inside Shay was actually really scared. I realized that I needed to be there for her and do everything I can to help her. I'll also always remember that nurse and be grateful to her forever. My point in sharing this story is that giving support to someone suffering from this condition can really be just as simple as listening, reassuring, and telling them that you've got their back. Now let's move on to how to support a loved one suffering from bipolar. Two types of bipolar, 1 and 2. The main difference is that bipolar 1 is more severe. According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, bipolar disorder is a mental illness that causes dramatic shifts in a person's mood, energy, and ability to think clearly. People with bipolar experience high and low moods known as mania and depression, which differ from the typical ups and downs most people experience. Symptoms and their severity can vary. A person with bipolar disorder may have distinct manic or depressed states, but may also have extended periods, sometimes years, without symptoms. A person can also experience both extremes simultaneously or in rapid sequence. Severe bipolar episodes of mania or depression may include psychotic symptoms such as hallucinations or delusions. Usually, these psychotic symptoms mirror a person's extreme mood. People with bipolar disorder who have psychotic symptoms can be wrongly diagnosed as having schizophrenia. To be diagnosed with bipolar disorder, a person must have experienced at least one episode of mania or hypomania. Hypomania is a milder form of mania that doesn't include psychotic episodes. People with hypomania can often function well in social situations or at work. Some people with bipolar disorder will have episodes of mania or hypomania many times throughout their life. Others may experience them only rarely. Although someone with bipolar may find an elevated mood or mania appealing, especially if it occurs after depression, the high does not stop at a comfortable or controllable level. Moods can rapidly become more irritable, behavior more unpredictable, and judgment more impaired. During periods of mania, people frequently behave impulsively, make reckless decisions, and take unusual risks. Most of the time, people in manic states are unaware of the negative consequences of their actions. With bipolar disorder, suicide is an ever-present danger because some people become suicidal even in manic states. Learning from prior episodes what kinds of behavior signals, red flags, or manic behavior can help manage the symptoms of the illness. The lows of bipolar depression are often so debilitating that people may be unable to get out of bed. Typically, people experiencing a depressive episode have difficulty falling and staying asleep, while others sleep far more than usual. When people are depressed, even minor decisions such as what to eat for dinner can be overwhelming. They may become obsessed with feelings of loss, personal failure, guilt, or helplessness. This negative thinking can lead to thoughts of suicide. The depressive symptoms that obstruct a person's ability to function must be present nearly every day for a period of at least 2 weeks for a diagnosis. Depression associated with bipolar disorder may be more difficult to treat and require a customized treatment plan. Now that you know more about bipolar, let me tell you what you can do to help a loved one suffering from this. I know exactly how to help because I've lived for many years with a loved one suffering from this. The most important thing to do to start out with is having boundaries. Again, ask yourself, have you taken care of your needs first? Do you have the resources to help? If yes, then let's get started. The help your loved one will need will depend on the severity of the episode and whether or not they are manic or depressed. Let's start with mania. A loved one suffering from mania can be very disorganized, easily distracted, and pretty much all over the place. They can have trouble eating 3 square meals a day, reason being they get too distracted. Because of this, during manic episodes, it is common to have unintentional and dramatic weight loss. So what you can do here is to ensure there are groceries and meals that can be easily prepared. If you don't live with the person in question, offer to take them out to eat or bring a meal to them. Another problem you might notice is that they might get too distracted to keep their homes tidy and may ignore their responsibilities. You can help them with this by helping them tidy up and organize. Also, you could help them schedule appointments and remind them of their appointments and obligations. It's not that they are blowing off their responsibilities, it's just that they honestly get too distracted. So you can be there for them emotionally. Listen to what they have to say. They might have some outlandish ideas. They might be having some happy delusions. For example, my loved one has had the delusion that women cannot get enough of him. He told me that every time a woman sees him that they say, "Wow." He was so happy when telling me about this. This delusion is not causing anyone any harm, and it is actually elevating his mood. So there is no need to burst his bubble in this situation. As long as the delusion is not hurting anyone, go with the flow. If you correct your loved one on every point, you're going to damage your relationship with that person and make them feel isolated and alone. Also, your loved one might have many goals, plans, and projects during this time that they may seem unreachable. Let them go with it. Mania, if harnessed correctly, can be an awesome energy source that helps people get an incredible amount of work done in a short amount of time. Many high-functioning people with bipolar know how to harness their mania for good. What you need to be careful about regarding this is sleep. If your loved one goes 3 days without sleeping, they are at a very high risk for developing delusions and hallucinations. This is when things can get extremely dangerous. So don't let your loved, if you have any control over it, offer them melatonin, promote sleep as much as you can, remind them to take any sleep meds they have already been prescribed, offer to take them to the doctor if you notice the mania is getting out of control. One of the most helpful things you can do to help your loved one is create a consistent schedule or daily routine they can follow every day. This is immensely helpful. If they have a routine down, it is so much easier to eat 3 meals a day, exercise, sleep appropriately, and take care of responsibilities. Also, promote exercise, which in many cases won't be so hard to do. When someone is having a manic episode, they have way too much energy. It can be so much energy that they can get agitated because of it. Go exercise with that person. Go to the gym together. Take a class together. Go bike riding together. Do something fun. It'll be good for both of you. Regular exercise during a manic episode is really important, and not only that, it will help with sleep. Now, I'm not saying you have to do all of the above to support your loved one. If you only have the time and resources to do one of the above tasks to help your loved one, then do it. See if you can enlist other people in their support group to help as well. Now let's talk about depressive episodes. These can be very dangerous because people with bipolar tend to be very impulsive and are at a high risk for suicide during a depressive episode. This is especially tragic because if it weren't for the impulsivity, they probably would have never gone through with it. If you know a loved one is depressed, check up on them daily. Call them or visit them. Spend time with them if you can. You could watch movies together, take naps, listen, just be present. During a depressive episode, your loved one might not even want to get out of the bed. If this is the case, don't harass them and make them get up and be productive. Just be there for them. Again, during a depressive episode, you can always help them with groceries, tidying up the house, and managing responsibilities. Offer to take them to the doctor and appointments. Also, I take back what I said about not harassing them about getting up and being productive. Some days you should let them rest. Don't bother them. However, you should promote a daily routine, promote healthy eating, promote taking meds, promote going to therapy, promote exercising, promote doing activities they used to enjoy. Do this with an encouraging tone. Tell them you know they can get back to normal. Tell them that their depression will not last forever. So this episode is going to be much longer than I originally thought. So I'm going to break it up into parts. So this is part 1. There will definitely be a part 2 and 3. Part 2, I will be covering how to support a loved one struggling with PTSD, depression, and anxiety. Major depressive disorder does differ from depression suffered by those struggling with bipolar, which is why I want to cover it separately. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. Remember, I cover the darkest issues that face humanity today, not to show you how messed up the world is, but to bring light to it so healing can begin. Mental health is not talked about enough. Even those working in healthcare often do not have enough training on how to support those dealing with a mental health crisis. That is why today I've shared with you how to support your loved ones struggling with mental health. I would especially love to get feedback on this episode. If you know of any tips or tricks on how to help those struggling with schizophrenia, bipolar, or anyone suffering from delusions and hallucinations, I would love to include it in my next episode. Also, if you've suffered with schizophrenia, bipolar, or hallucinations and delusions, please let me know what helps you, and we can talk about it. So, if you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions, please email me at darkmotherpodcast@gmail.com. I respond to all emails every Wednesday. Also, please like, subscribe, share, and comment in order to spread tools, skills, and knowledge that will help you and your loved ones rise up out of the chaos. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a good day.